What if I sat here and told you that there's a strategy so easy, so brain dead, and it actually works stupidly well? What if I then proceeded to tell you that some of the top players in the game are abusing this strategy every single day to win their matches? Now, you probably wouldn't believe me. Valorant is a tactical game, where learning the game takes a lot of practice, but that's where you're wrong. In this video, we're going to tell you about the brain-dead strategy that pros are abusing in Radiant lobbies to dominate every single game. We'll teach you how to farm free elo on 2 agents to start out. But let's be clear, this playstyle can be adopted for any agent, no matter who. Specifically though, this works super well for both Gekko and Phoenix. This guide will be an ultra-comprehensive view of every single stage in the game, and will include when and how you should be using this strategy to put immense pressure on the competition. The best part is, we hardly see players take advantage of this at all, so you'll have players constantly confused. I personally play against Immortals and Radiants in my games, and I barely see anyone doing this. We'll talk about Phoenix first though, and why he is so important for this strategy. Our goal is to take advantage of agents with spammable ultimates, to absolutely take over a game. Phoenix is by far the best agent in the game for this, because his ultimate only costs 6 ultimate orbs. This means that in a lot of situations, you can get your ultimate every other round. This is incredibly valuable, because Run It Back essentially gives you a free entry frag onto site. Even if you don't get any kills with it, your team can still easily trade you out. Let's take a look at a Boaster who is a huge advocate for ult orbs, as you'll see here on Breeze. Just look at how much of an emphasis he puts on building his ultimate every round. You can see here he starts off by immediately grabbing the free orb in Cave. This ultimate orb is most often entirely free for the attackers in Ranked, since very rarely will defenders actively fight to deny it. You can find ult orbs like this on nearly every map that are practically free to one side. He secures 2 kills, plants the spike, and then proceeds to land another frag onto the enemy team. This team has Boaster sitting at a massive 5 out of 6 ult points, which is ridiculous. All he needs to do now is grab his final orb from Cave. With this alone, if his team gets into a sticky situation in the next round, he can use his ult to help secure that round. Now, let's fast forward a little bit. Here you can see Boaster pop his ult and then die. And the second he comes out of his ult, he's right back to gobbling up more orbs like the little gremlin that he is. The Phoenix aficionado gets one more frag before losing the next fight. But take a look at this. After he dies, he ends the round with 3 out of 6 ult points. Not only did he already use his ultimate, but he ensured he built it halfway up by the end of the round by simply grabbing the orb. Here we can see Boaster explaining why it's important to cycle your ultimate on Phoenix.
If you have your ulti, you kind of want to get rid of it ASAP, because then you have a chance of getting your ulti again for the second time, you know, stream?
Now, it's important to note, this doesn't mean to use it at every single opportunity. Since Phoenix has a 6 charge ult, he realistically can have an ult every 2 to 3 rounds, which is exactly how Boaster plays Phoenix and abuses this. If there is a situation that can be helped out in any way at all by the use of a Phoenix ultimate, it's a good idea to spend it, because you'll have it back super quick anyways. Keep in mind, this is only part of the puzzle. If you're looking to climb, ult farming is fantastic. But if you're neglecting your fundamentals, you're fighting an uphill battle. This goes far beyond things like crosshair placement and counter-strafing too. It also includes things you probably don't even realize that you're doing wrong, like peeking, spacing with teammates, or even just where you choose to stand. The players who are consistently able to drop 30 in their matches are masters of all these things. And you could be too now with our Aim God Masterclass. It's expertly designed to teach you all the fundamentals that you need to know in just one course. Our goal is to have this course teach you everything you need to know, which is exactly why we're constantly updating it as users submit feedback. The game is always developing, and that's why our website does too. With new courses posted every single month, you can be sure you're always ahead of the curve when it comes to your mechanics. And on top of that, we also offer a rank improvement guarantee. So if you don't climb while using our service, you don't pay. We know it sounds insane, but our #1 priority is to be a standing name in the community for years to come. And the only way to do that is to create the best product we can. Check it out using the link below. Carrying on, ways you should be playing around the orbs. We'll talk about some real game situations to help you out. If you're defending on attack, you should make it a point to attempt to secure as many orbs as possible per round for your team and yourself. If you're defaulting, you're likely already in a decent position to get the space needed to secure an orb in the first place. Maintaining and constantly building your ult on any character can potentially win you rounds you otherwise wouldn't have. So, Fight for that orb, secure it whenever you're defaulting, and build that 6-point ultimate so you can roll over the enemy team. It's also important to note that some characters have amazing post-plant ultimate abilities. If you're 5 out of 6 for your run it back while playing Phoenix, it's worth it to take the spike and plant it. You can then leave the site and pop the ult when the enemy team attempts to retake. Farming orbs can be done on defense as well, most notably in B long on bind. Now, it's smart to start off with a teammate smoking long and having you grab orb. It'll take the enemies basically sprinting and luckily spamming the smoke to even touch you in this case. Another good example, if you're playing defense and the enemy team is hitting the opposite site, it might sometimes be worth it to take that extra time to grab the free orb before rotating over, especially if you're one-off ult. Realistically, you can have Phoenix's ultimate every 2 to 3 rounds, given you're farming orbs and planting or defusing the spike. You can see how this would be insanely impactful in any rank match, yet it's overlooked by so many players. This can also be insanely impactful in overtime. During overtime, every agent in the game only needs 3 orbs to get their ultimate. This actually changes the stakes of the game because now every other ultimate becomes even more valuable. Think about it. Some ultimates cost more for a reason, but as soon as overtime hits, every ultimate actually costs the same. We're valuing Phoenix ult so highly for this tactic because it's easy to get, but the moment overtime hits, every agent in the game now has a 3-cost ultimate. It instantly makes more difficult ultimates like Sova's Hunter's Fury, Killjoy's Lockdown, and especially things like Raze's Showstopper a massive priority. This also increases the value of having these agents plant exponentially, since one plant is now 1/3 of your ultimate, rather than a 7th or an 8th. So by just having a Raze pick up 1 orb and plant the spike, she could potentially have a showstopper available by getting just 1 kill in the round. And that's absolutely crazy. We're not even factoring in if you just play the round slow and attempt to grab both ultimate orbs. You could potentially get your ultimate without ever taking a fight at all. We're mostly focusing on the perspective of the offense, but defenders can abuse this too, in situations where orbs are accessible to them as well. On a map like Bind, oftentimes you can grab the long orb and then plan for a showers crunch. After TPing, you can instantly grab the second orb, and you're either one off your ultimate, you literally have it off a kill near showers. And that's absurd. Just having your ultimate in general can be insanely impactful. With Phoenix specifically, his run it back ability is easily the most powerful ability in this kit. And literally the reason you pick him. A Phoenix main will never be at full potential if they're not grabbing orbs and constantly cycling their ult for risk-free entry frags. This is the whole name of the game for farming orbs and spike plants. Constant, risk-free ultimate pressure. Let's look at this strategy from the perspective of other agents though. Ever play against a Gekko that seems to have an ult every single round? It's annoying having to deal with Thrash sliding across the ground at you all the time. And we're going to talk about why that even happens in the first place. Gekko is similar to Phoenix in the sense that Thrash only takes 7 orbs, which is still on the lower end for agents. Thrash farming can arguably be more impactful than Phoenix in the right hands. If we compare Run It Back and Thrash, the glaring difference here is that Thrash can not only single-handedly stop a push, detaining multiple players at once, he can also be picked up and used again a second time. Thrash makes entries onto site, retakes, and post plants infinitely easier if they're able to land a detain. And at the cost of 7 orbs, it really can't be beat. But here's where Gekko really separates the orb game from Phoenix. He's easily able to use Wingman to secure plant, and will be doing so the majority of attacking rounds, and this just feeds Gekko ult points throughout the rounds. Let's swing by Asuna and see how he approaches Lotus with Gekko. He starts off with a quick pick onto the enemy fade, then proceeds to throw out his Wingman and grab the orb while his Wingman plants. This puts him at 3 orbs right off the bat, which once again, it's ridiculous. Let's skip ahead a little bit, where Asuna decides to send out Thrash to do his bidding. At the start of the round, he has his teammate open up the door to expose Thrash's first victim. He tags the Raze, who turns into an easy kill for him. Proceeding forward, he picks up his buddy off the ground and plays in a more safe manner, waiting for Thrash to rejoin him. He lands a kill and realizes he needs to leave the action in order to effectively use Thrash. Asuna leaves through the door, gets into a good spot, then proceeds to use his ultimate to win the round. Obviously, we all know how effective Thrash is, but that's what we're trying to get at here. Having an ultimate like Thrash readily available every 2 to 3 rounds is insanely powerful. All it takes is farming a few orbs and plants, and you'll be making plays like Asuna in absolutely no time. Oh yeah, yeah, we forgot to mention, but Asuna ended that round with 3 orbs. Let's see how he proceeds. You can see in between then and now, he's farmed a couple orbs to ensure that he has ult again. Unfortunately, his team did let him down here, but he didn't let them down. Asuna clutched up and ended the round with 4 more ult points. Asuna uses his ultimate 5 times this game, and the only thing that held him back is that there weren't more opportunities to use it. You can see the deliberate effort that he put forth in order to farm his ultimate throughout the entirety of this match, and he's massively rewarded for it. Farming orbs, planting, defusing, they all worked together to ensure that Asuna had Thrash almost any time he ended up needing it. Ultimate abilities are a huge part of Valorant. They take time to gather for a reason. They give you a massive chance of impacting the round, and when you watch top players, you'll notice they rarely hold their ultimate for more than 1 round. So it makes sense that the more often you have these abilities, the easier the game gets for you. We made this guide because we truly do see far too many players just ignoring the ult orbs. And trust us, you don't have to play Phoenix or Gekko to use this strategy. Farming orbs for any character will work well. If you're playing an agent with a subpar ultimate, help your teammates and remind your team they should in fact be grabbing these free charges whenever they can. So who exactly does this strategy not really work well for? Let's talk about it. The least situational and impactful ultimates are going to be your best friend when deciding if you should adopt this playstyle. You should also consider the charges to an ultimate. Farming Killjoy orbs is definitely good, but it won't be nearly as good as some characters, depending on the map you're on. On a few select maps, it might be better to farm a Phoenix ult over a Killjoy, due to the fact that KJ ult isn't very strong on some maps, but on specific maps, farming KJ ult becomes way more prevalent. Take a map like Lotus, for example. The orbs are all in semi-contested areas, but there are still 3 orbs to control. It's important to note Killjoy ultimate is not strong on every site in the game. Character ults in the S tier of our list are generally very strong on every map. S tier in this list will include characters that rely on having their ultimate often. A tier will be solid choices to farm for. Anything below B tier should not be chosen over anyone on the list, but they should still grab orbs if they're available and nobody else can take them. First off, in S tier, you should be 100% prioritizing Phoenix and Gekko. They heavily rely on having their ultimate often to assist the team with taking space. Next up, we have Raze. She'll often be the go-to agent you'll see pro teams give ultimate orbs to over on offensive. Her ability to create space with Showstopper is almost unmatched, and it might cost 8 ultimate orbs, but this ability is incredibly powerful, and if you're fragging out, you can get it multiple times and a half. Also in S tier, we have Deadlock and Harbor, both coming in at 7 charges, and both can have insane implications when taking site control. These 2 characters don't rely as much on their ultimate as the previous 2, so we're going to place them a bit lower on the tier. The only reason we didn't include some of the next characters that we're about to talk to into S tier is due to the amount of orbs needed to farm consistently. These characters should definitely have their ults farmed, but the amount of charges and how situational they are, it lowers the place on our list. Our frontrunner for A tier is without a doubt Killjoy. Her ultimate is easily one of the strongest in the game. The 9 charges needed is the only reason that it's lower on the list. You're not going to see Killjoy cycling her ultimate nearly as much as anyone in S tier. So let's take a look at our next character, KO, who sadly doesn't get too much play in the higher ranks due to him not having a droning aspect in his kit. KO's ability Null cost 8 points. The reason Sage is placed a bit lower than KO is Resurrect tends to be a tad more situational than people think. Resurrect can be an amazing game changer of an ability, but unfortunately it tends to be situational, and it tends to be hard to get off if there are no bodies in a resable position. Next up, we have ISO, who might come as a surprise to some people, but ISO's ultimate is way stronger than a lot of people give it credit for, costing 7 ult points. ISO can pull enemies into a pocket dimension that can save rounds easily in a lot of situations. It also makes taking site easier, as it's one less player to worry about temporarily. There unfortunately is a major risk factor, which places him at the bottom of A tier. Next up, we have Skye. Her ultimate's fantastic, it's cheap, and it's not very situational, allowing her to basically just use it whenever it's available, and gain a ton of info. The cabbages are often pretty easy to deal with, but its ability to lead your team onto site safely or to make accurate decisions during the mid-round makes this ability very valuable. Finally, we've got Brimstone. Brimstone's ultimate is fantastic at securing rounds, and while it's not always guaranteed kill, it's great at zoning the enemy team either off the spike or out of different areas on site. This ability is almost always usable, and very rarely provides no value, so it lands Brim pretty high on the list. For B tier, we have our characters that are still solid ultimates you can farm if you have a free opportunity to grab an orb somehow. Breach, Fade, Viper, and Yoru are our picks for B tier. These ults can be good, but in high elo, players just get better about playing around. In Breach and Fade's case, teams will just play off site for retake. And in Viper's case, there's a lot of counterplay to make it easy to trade her out. There's just normally a better agent on your team to prioritize ultimate orbs for, so while these agents all have great ultimates, they're normally not the priority. Let's talk quickly about our agents that gain weapons, as there are a couple situations where you'll want to be grabbing orbs for them. A good situation to note is if you're around an orb off of your ultimate as an agent like Jet, Neon, or Chamber, and your team's on an eco. Generally, you'll want to prioritize orbs over other teammates to give your team the best chance of winning the round. This can definitely win you a couple rounds, just by having the ability to carry around with your ultimate. As for anyone not mentioned so far in this list, generally they'll be considered C tier, and just not the best agents to focus orbs onto, either due to their ultimate being super situational or just not that impactful. Not to say that they can never get value out of their ult, or that it's not worth grabbing orbs, it's just not a priority. Using all of the knowledge we've given you, make sure you're keeping in mind the order in which characters should be farming their orb, and assist your teammates in farming orbs if you're not a high impact agent. Ultimates are a huge part of the game, and they're still being overlooked, so get out there, farm those orbs, and win more ranked games. Alright guys, before we wrap this up, let's tell you a little bit more about SkillCapped. So we offer a 5-division rank up guarantee, and we think that's a pretty crazy thing to offer. It's kind of like getting a gym membership that guarantees you'll get ripped. Your local gym would go bust if they offered you that, but not us. We've offered this for years because our service really does work. It works so well, in fact, that we're able to produce by far the largest catalog of premium Valorant guides on the entire internet. We add new courses every month with over 1,000 guides curated into over 50 courses, so no one can compare. We also have a direct line of communication with subscribers in our Discord, so you can get connected immediately to some of the best players in the game, who will respond to all questions asked. Sign up today for as little as $6.99 a month if you're serious about improving. So, that's going to be all for this one today. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.